Hi, this is Ali Arango of Little Guy CGI, and today I would like to show you how to animate a dragon walk cycle inside of Blender 2.78C. So let's get started. Okay, if this is your first time in Blender, I recommend you go to File, User Preferences, go to Input, and then choose Select with left click. Blender's default select is with right click, and this may confuse you if you're coming from Adobe programs or other 3D programs. Okay, what you see in front of you is the result of another tutorial where I was showing how to have this dragon run or do a run cycle. I'll put a link up so you can get to that. Before that tutorial, I did a tutorial where I showed how to model this dragon from a cube. We went from a cube all the way to the dragon mesh. We, textured it. I'll put a link up so you can get to that. After that tutorial, I did another tutorial where I showed you how to make an armature and then connect the armature to the dragon mesh. So I'll put a link up to that as well. Okay, if you came to this tutorial right from the dragon run cycle tutorial, this pose that the dragon is currently in is from the run cycle. You can click here and then you can name this dragon run cycle, then press enter, then click this F right here. And what this does is this will make Blender remember that dragon run cycle. And it will remember this as an action. So with all of our bones selected, we're going to press X, and then we're going to click delete to delete all of the keyframes. We're then going to make sure that we're on frame 1, which you can see we're on frame 1 right here. I'm then going to hold Alt, and while holding Alt, I'm going to press R. This resets the rotation of our bones. Then also while holding Alt, I'm going to press G, and that reset the location of all of our bones. Okay, what we're going to do now is hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back. I'm going to hold Shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to click on this bone right here. This bone doesn't currently have a name on it. So we're going to click here. We're going to name this foot, capital H, handle.L, and then press enter to lock that in. Okay, with this bone name, we're going to click here. We're going to hold Control. While holding Control, we're going to press C to copy that name. We're then going to press enter. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to click the same basic bone on the other side. I'm then going to click here on its name. I'm going to hold Control. While holding Control, I'm going to press V. And then where it has .L, because it's copied from the other name, I'm just going to press backspace and then press R, and then press enter to lock that name in. Okay, the reason why we did that was we're going to make use of copied poses that we are going to reverse. For that to work properly, we need to have the bones named, particularly the bones that are on the opposite sides of each other. Okay, if you're new to this channel and new to the videos on this channel and you're like, what's going on? I came here for a walk cycle. What is the talk of this other stuff? Don't let that get to you. I don't tend to like to make videos that are considered in a group. If you are, though, this one kind of is. I like to make videos that are kind of, for the most part, units. I consider units of their own. So those were just some things that, we need to be dealt with from the other videos. However, we're now going to work, directly on this walk cycle. So I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to right click on frame 40. And when we right clicked on frame 40, this green line, which is our timeline indicator, jump right here. We're then hovered over this timeline indicator. The reason why we want to hover over here, because in Blender, where your mouse pointer is at, your shortcut keys change depending where your mouse pointer is at. So with our mouse pointer hovered over this area, we're going to press E. And what that did was that just made our timeline come right to our timeline indicator. So now we have 40 frames in our timeline. Okay, what we are making here is a walk cycle, and what that is basically as this timeline plays over and over again, it should look like the dragon is continually walking. We are going to need 5 poses to make this look fairly decent. So that is what we are going to do. So I'm going to click here to go back to frame 1. Okay, as we work our way through this, the way we're going to do this is you kind of want to pretend as you're doing it. Since we're dealing with a creature that has 4 legs that are going to be doing the walk cycle, we want to just focus on these 2 legs first and pretty much not pay attention to these 2 legs. We'll work on these 2 legs first, get them going, and then once we've dealt with these 2 legs, then we'll go to the back 2 legs. Okay, so I'm going to press the N key to take away that panel there. I'm going to hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in more. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Control and the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom back. Okay, so we're going to click right here. As you move your armature bones, what you want to do is you want to generally move your armature bones on an axis. You can do that by pressing G and then X, Y, or Z. You can also do that by using the manipulator right here. So I'm going to press N. Okay, not N. I just took that away. I'm going to press N to take that away. That's the Properties panel. I'm going to press T to bring up the Properties panel. I'm going to go to the Navigation tab. I'm going to hover here and then left click to give us more space right here. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan the view. I'm then going to click right to go to right view. We're in right perspective view, which means we kind of see things in a 3D kind of way. We want to go to right orthographic view. So I'm going to click here, and now you can see, you know, our dragon looks 2D as far as this perspective. I'm going to hold Control as well as the mouse button to zoom in. So with this foot handle here selected, what we're going to do is take our manipulator and we're just going to push this leg forward like that. Okay, with this leg forward, we're going to press R to rotate on the X axis like this. What we're going to do now is click this foot handle. We're going to take the manipulator and pull this back. You want to be careful about having this be totally locked out. You don't want your limbs to be totally locked. You want them to be fairly straight, but you don't want them to be locked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and then I'm going to push down just slightly. And I did that just because I didn't want this to be locked. You want a slight bend to it. So what I'm going to do here is click here, press R to rotate on the X axis like this. I'm going to pull this back some more, then pull this up some like that. Okay, so for this first pose, you want your, legs to be going forward a decent amount from where it was. The front leg as well as the back one going back. You don't want it locked. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to click here. This will give us the ability to move our claws. So I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis like that. Then I'm going to left click to lock that in. Okay, now I'm going to click on this bone. This bone will give us the ability to move these claws here. So I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis like this. I'm then going to left click to lock that in. We're on frame 1. So what we're going to do now is we're going to press A to deselect all of our bones. We're going to press A again to select all of our bones. Currently, what we have right here is we have our we have Blender set up so that once we press I with a visible bone selected, that Blender is going to put a location or a rotation keyframe on that bone. The way that you would set this up is if you have this blank, you would click here. You would see this list right here, and then you would select Lock Rot right there. After you selected that, you would see Lock Rot right here. And then when you select a bone, you press I, Blender will put a keyframe for that bone, or whatever bones you have that are selected as well as visible. It'll put a location rotation keyframe on that bone. So with that being said, what we're going to do now is we're going to press I. So when we pressed I, you can see here we have this list right here, and this list right here is showing us all of the bones that we currently have selected that are visible. We also see these dots right here that are representing the actual keyframes that are on this armature rig for all of the bones that you see right here. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to right click and drag to frame 20. So you can see we're on frame 20 here. You can also look right here and see that we're currently on frame 20. Okay, so what we need is we need for this leg to go back and this leg to go forward. Now we can manually do this. We can manually do that, and that would be fine. However, Blender has a nice feature built into it that makes this easier for us. And what that feature is we can take this pose where this leg is going forward, this leg is going back, and then we can actually paste the opposite pose. So to do that, what we need to do is first copy this pose, right? So we're going to click here. When I clicked here, you didn't see anything happen. However, Blender has this pose basically in its memory now because I clicked copy. What I can do now is I can go to this button. I didn't click it. But when I do click this button, Blender is going to paste the opposite pose that you currently see now. So this leg that's currently going forward will be going back, and this leg that's currently going back will be going forward. So I'm going to click here. And now you can see this leg is going forward now, where it was previously going back. This leg is going back, that was previously going forward. This is a great feature. While it's not necessary, it does tend to save you a lot of time. So now that we have this pose like we want it to be, when you look here, we still don't have keyframes here on the timeline. So as you're working your way through animations, make sure you check, we have the pose and that's good. However, we need to put the keyframes on this pose. So what we're going to do is we're going to press I, and when we did that, Blender put keyframes that show us the location as well as the rotation for all of the bones that are currently visible as well selected. Okay, so what we want to do now is go to frame 40. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and drag our timeline indicator to frame 40. You can see we're on frame 40 here. When you look here, you can also see that we're on frame 40. Okay, so since we're on frame 40, I'm going to hover my mouse here. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan right here. What we want to do here is we have the timeline indicator on frame 40. One of the main reasons we have this timeline indicator on frame 40 is we want to use this timeline indicator to show us where to put keyframes at. What keyframes do we want to put here that we want to show right here? What we're going to do is we're going to left click on these keyframes. We're actually going to duplicate these keyframes and then move them right to here. So what we want to do is click the top of this whole list right here. So we click the top like we did, and you can see that all of these keyframes are highlighted. So with all of these keyframes highlighted as well as selected, we're going to hold shift, and then while holding shift press D, and then we're just not going to click anything. We just move our mouse. We line this up. We want our keyframes to be right in the center of the timeline indicator, then we left click, right? You don't see anything happen here, which is fine. But that's what we wanted. We wanted to duplicate these keyframes and put them here. The reason why we wanted to do that is this is a walk cycle. So we want this to start and end with either the exact pose or very similar poses for things like run cycles as well as walk cycles. Okay, so what do we do now? Now what we do is we can see, this is pretty equal. We have one here. We have this, our timeline, right? From 1 to 40. We have right in the beginning a timeline, right in the middle. Right in the beginning we have keyframes. Right in the middle we have keyframes. Then we have keyframes right at the end. So it's pretty easy when you're setting this up to see where the keyframes are at. Now what we want to do is we want to look at the keyframes that are on this frame as well as this frame. We can tell there's keyframes because we can see these yellow lines here. We want to right click and drag our timeline indicator. We could have just clicked as well. I just chose to drag. We want to put this right on frame 10. So we're right in between the keyframes that are on frame 1 as well as on frame 20. Okay, what we want to do now is we want to, with all of our armature bones selected, we want to hold Alt, and while we're holding Alt, we want to press R. I'm still holding Alt. While I'm holding Alt, I want to press G. What that did was that reset the rotation as well as the location on all of our armature bones. So with that done, we want to press I to insert a keyframe for this current position. Okay, we still have work to do on this pose. The reason why I had you set the keyframes for this pose is that when you set a pose, if you don't set keyframes and then you move the timeline indicator, you will lose the work that you did on that pose so far. Okay, basically what's going on with this pose is when you look at the timeline, time flows from frame 1 to frame 40. So it flows like that from front to back, right? As time is flowing, this leg here is moving back. This is important to understand because when we hold the middle mouse button, as this leg comes back, this leg will come forward. As it comes forward, it will move up to have the dragon move forward as far as its walk cycle. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click here to go back to right view. By the way, if you don't see this navigation tab, if you go to File, User Preferences, go to Add-ons. If you put a check mark next to 3D View : 3D Navigation, you will see that navigation tab. Okay, as humans as well as creatures tend to walk, they tend to have an up and down motion. For this pose particularly, we want to have our dragon stand as tall as possible without having its limbs locked out. So what we're going to do is we're going to click here. We're going to take the manipulator. We're going to pull up. We want to be careful that our limbs aren't totally locked. Okay, so this should be good. Since we have that pose, we're going to press A to deselect, A to select again, and then we're going to press I to set the keyframes for this pose. We still have work to do. I just don't want the pose to be lost if we move the timeline indicator. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to hold the middle mouse button and rotate the view. We're going to click here. We're going to take the manipulator and we're going to pull this leg up. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. We want this leg to go up a decent amount. With this selected here, we're going to press R to rotate on the X-axis like this. Be careful that you don't have the thumb go into the forearm. You can either have less rotation or you can push down some like that. We are going to click right here. We're going to press R to rotate on the X-axis to bend the claws. We're then going to left click to lock that in. I'm then going to press A to deselect, A to select everything, and then I to lock the keyframes in for the work so far. We still have more work to do on this pose though. Okay, what we're going to do now is hold the middle mouse button to rotate. We're going to press A to deselect. This dragon, as it walks, is going to be trying to fight against gravity. You want to be aware of that. Gravity is trying to push down. The dragon is trying to resist the gravity by pushing back against gravity. What we're going to do is we're going to click here, hold shift, then click here. We're going to press R to rotate on the Y axis like that. I'm then going to left click to lock this in. I want this weight to seem more like it's over this leg, so I'm going to drag to the side like this. I'm then going to press A to deselect, A to select everything, and then I'm going to press I to lock the keyframes in for this pose. We still have more work to do for this pose though. I'm then going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. There's bones in this leg that you can't currently see that are hidden. They're hidden just to make things easier to work with as we pose. I'm going to click here. I'm going to take the manipulator and pull up. As I was pulling up, I was looking here. I just wanted to make sure that the bones here weren't totally locked out. Straight, when I say locked out. So what we're going to do is press A to deselect, A to select all the bones, and then I to set the keyframes for that particular pose. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to take a look. I'm going to click here. I'm going to pull this over some like that. I'm going to click here. Pull this up some like that. I'm going to click here, pull that back some like that. I'm then going to press A to deselect, A to select all of the armature bones. I'm then going to press I to insert keyframes for all of those armature bones. Okay, I'm going to hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Okay, with all of our bones currently selected, we're going to click here to copy this pose. So with that pose copied, we're going to right click and drag to frame 30. So you can see we're on frame 30 there. You can see that we're on frame 30 here as well. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the paste the reverse pose button, which is right here, and then we're going to left click. So now we have the reverse pose currently pasted onto our armature rig. And then with this pose on our armature rig, we're going to press I to insert the keyframes for this pose. Okay, currently our timeline indicator is set to end at frame 40. What we want to do is I'm going to right click and go to frame 39, which you can see right here, and then I'm going to hover my mouse here, and then I'm going to press E. So now our timeline ends at frame 39. Okay, the reason why we did that was when you have a walk cycle or run cycle, basically what you want is you want for, your timeline indicator to go through, your animation to go through. When it gets to the end of the animation, you want it to go back to the first frame. So to do that, you basically have the last frame off of the timeline. You might sit there and say, well, if you have the last frame off of the timeline, why even have it there? And basically what's going on is Blender will interpolate from here to this pose, even though this pose is off of the timeline, it'll still interpolate to it. But because the timeline ends here, basically, as this plays again, the last pose essentially becomes the first pose, which you have right here. This generally just makes your animation look better. Okay, let's click to go back to the beginning of our timeline. Then let's press N to bring up our properties panel. Let's put a check mark next to only render. And then let's click play to see. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. I think it looks decent. I'm going to click here. My intention here is to show you how to set up a basic walk cycle. You can, once you have the basics down, you can go back, you can add in more details, to make your animation look how you want it to look. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to click here to go back to frame 1. We're going to press A to deselect. When we first started this walk cycle, we, paid attention to these legs, and we pretty much, didn't look at these legs right here. Essentially, what we're going to do now is we're going to do the opposite. We're going to, pay attention to right here, and pretty much, not pay too much attention anyway to right here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to click here to go to right view. The right view. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. We're going to click to grab this foot handle bone. We're going to grab this and pull back. We want to be careful that we don't totally lock that leg out. I'm then going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to click right here. I'm then going to right click. I'm then going to push this leg forward. You want to be careful that you don't have this leg being pushing into this other foot. So I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to pull this to the side some. I'm holding the middle mouse button to take a look. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press A to select all of our armature bones. I'm then going to press I to lock that pose in. Okay, with all of these armature bones selected, we're going to click here to copy this pose. We're then going to right click and drag to frame 20. We're then going to click this button here to paste the reverse pose. So I'm going to left click. Now there's the reverse pose. Now I'm going to press I to insert the keyframes for that reverse pose. Okay, now I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to right click right here and drag this timeline indicator right to this last pose here. I'm then going to left click right here. When I left clicked here, all of the other keyframes were deselected. So I have all of these keyframes here selected. I'm going to hold shift. While holding shift, I'm going to press D to duplicate. And now, without clicking anything, I'm just going to left click and drag these keyframes over. I want to have these keyframes totally go over these ones here. I'm then going to left click to lock in those keyframes. So now these keyframes that were duplicated here have replaced these keyframes here. So now I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, if for whatever reason you were confused by me, taking these keyframes and putting them over these keyframes, you could have also clicked here, deleted these keyframes, and did the same thing, just duplicated and then put these keyframes in the place right there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to press A to select all of our bones. The main reason why I did that was just so we could see this keyframe here. We're going to right click and hold our timeline indicator to go right to here, which is frame 10. One other thing I wanted to say about these keyframes here is we didn't, select all of our armature bones and then press I to insert a keyframe for those particular bones because we were copying keyframes that are already set from here to here. So, okay, so basically what's going on here is this is the in-between pose. Remember, this is the pose we have our dragon trying to stand up tall. This is also the pose where we're, this leg was back. Now this leg is coming forward here. So, with this leg, we want this leg to actually be going up. We want this leg here, the leg that's away from us, to be supporting the dragon's weight. So this should be the leg that's going up into the air. Okay, we're going to press A to select the bones. We're going to click here. We're going to take the manipulator and lift this up like that. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X-axis like this. This bone here controls the claws. However, this bone here will let us bend this part of the foot back. So I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to click here, press R to rotate on the X-axis like this. I'm then going to left click to lock that in. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm then going to click here, press R to rotate on the X-axis like this to bend the claws. I'm then going to left click to lock that in. I'm then going to press A to deselect, A to select all of our armature bones, and then I'm going to press I to insert a keyframe for all of our armature bones. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Hold the middle mouse button again. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to click here to grab this bone. I'm going to hold Shift and click here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. I'm now going to press R to rotate on the Y-axis. Like that. I'm then going to left click to lock that rotation in. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to click here. I'm then going to move this up some. This particular bone, which is the bone that basically controls our center of gravity, so the whole rig moved up. I'm then going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press A to select all of our armature bones. I'm then going to press I to lock in that pose. And when I say lock in that pose, we put keyframes for all of the armature bones for that pose. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to click this bone right here, hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to push in some like that. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back some. I'm then going to press A to deselect. I'm then going to press A to select all of our armature bones. I'm then going to press I to put keyframes on all of our armature bones since I had just moved this armature bone. Also, with all of our armature bones selected, we're going to click Copy to copy this pose. We're then going to right click and drag to frame 30. Since we're on frame 30, we can see we're on frame 30 there. We can look here and see that we are also on frame 30 there as well. What we're going to do is click this button to paste the reverse pose. So now we have the reverse pose there. I'm then going to press I to insert keyframes for this pose. I'm then going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is click only render. Let's click play. And we can see we have our basic dragon walk cycle pose. So I'm going to click here to pause this. Okay, I'm going to click this check mark next to only render. One of the things you can do is you can add more details to your dragon pose. One of the things you can do to make that easier is you can press A to select all of your armature bones. When we set up these poses, whenever we set them up, we selected all of the armature bones that are currently visible. As far as all of the visible bones, we put a keyframe on those bones. Now that can cause you issues as far as adding details to your dragon animation. So how do you deal with that? Well, you make sure you have all of your armature bones selected. Like here, you come over here, you press A to select. I pressed A, that deselect all of our keyframes. I'm going to press A to select all of our keyframes. Now what we can do is press X. And what happens is we have this delete menu pop up. It says delete keyframes. We don't want that. What we want is this right here where it says clean keyframes. So when we left click clean keyframes, what this does is this essentially keeps the keyframes that we have done, work to, moved, and gets rid of the unnecessary keyframes. So this makes it easier for us as far as adding details. So one of the things, let's see how this goes. I'm going to click here to go back to frame 1. And one of the things that I want to do is I'm going to click on this head bone right here. I'm then going to click here. I'm going to scroll down. See where this says inherit rotation. Currently right now our dragon, as it walks, its head kind of like goes back and forth. What if we want the head to be, just basically not going back and forth, right? I'm going to take away this check mark for inherit rotation. Then I'm going to click only render. And now let's click play. And now our dragon is moving its body. It's moving its neck, but you can see that its head is basically, keeping itself upright as it's walking. So I'm going to click here to pause this animation. Okay, other small details you can add in. I'm going to click here. We'll click here to go back to frame 1. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to click here. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis to make the tail go to the side some, like that. I'll press R to rotate on the X axis to make the tail go up some, like this. So right now we currently have just this bone selected. What we can do is we can press I to insert a location keyframe in for this tailbone right here. We can then click here to copy the pose. We can go to frame 20. We can click paste the reverse pose, hit I. Then what we can do is go to frame 40. See how we have the tail selected here? I'm going to click this arrow. We have this, we're working with the tail here. We have all of this other information, right? What we can do is hover here, roll the mouse wheel. See this right here? When I hover here, it says only include channels relating to selected objects and data. So I'm going to left click here. And now the only information that we see here is information dealing with this tailbone right here. So what we can do is very similar to what we did with the rest of our armature, is with our timeline indicator here, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to left click here. I'm going to hold shift, and while holding shift, I'm going to press D. I'm then going to drag this to here. I'm then going to left click. So we drug the keyframes that were on frame 1 to frame 40 here. So now I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to come over here with this currently selected, that being our tailbone. I'm going to hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. With this bone selected, I'm going to press, actually I don't have to press because I have this here. I was about to press I to insert, but our keyframes are right here. So I'm going to press A to deselect. And what I'm going to do is click only render. I'm then going to click play. See that tail movement added in there? Pretty cool. So I'm going to click pause, go back to frame 1. Okay, those little details, the thing we did with the head as far as the tail, you can keep adding details onto your animation. That's what I meant about getting the basic animation down. Once you have that general walk cycle, you can keep working to make your animation better. As you continue to animate. Okay, I'm going to click play. As I look at this thing, I think about the different things that I've learned in Blender as far as modeling, rigging, animating, and I look at this thing and I praise God for giving me the knowledge to learn how to do this, the determination to make it through. Blender is very, very cool. The things you can do in this program are amazing. For you guys out there that requested me to do the more tutorials with animation for this dragon, thanks for requesting it. Thanks for watching the videos on this channel. Thank you for the comments that you leave me, the kindness you guys share with me through your comments, and I really, really do appreciate them. You guys help me to keep improving in my own skill. You help me to keep moving forward, and I'm thankful to all you guys. I'm just thankful. These are just some of the thoughts going through my mind. I'm thankful to God for the skill that I've gained in Blender, and I'm thankful to you guys for the inspiration, to keep moving forward in this stuff. Sometimes when you're making these tutorials, they come out, somewhat like you want them to be. Sometimes, better than you want them to be. This one, I like how it turned out. I definitely like how this tutorial turned out. Okay, guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and we share them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And to those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel and you would like to see more, please subscribe and thank you for viewing.